a lot of you weren't here when Dr. Verghese was explaining that because of the surge of COVID in the Valley, all of the medical personnel in the hospital are tending to the COVID patients. And so when they have other folks coming in, they call on the doctors at Eisenhower. And so Vinita is always, at any moment, could be called to go over to the hospital. So
yeah, I got my mask, everything ready. My
she's in the ready position.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you, Vinita, for being with us today. Vinita and I go back a long ways. When my husband and I owned our Alzheimer's dementia care homes in Palm Springs, Dr. Verghese was our medical director. And that's where I first got to see how far ahead of the system she was in terms of the way she interacted with her patients and families, and really thought of healthcare as a partnership, working together for optimum health, but in a holistic model. And so I thought this was a great way for us to start off the new year, to get some really good information on how we can accept some responsibility in working with our healthcare providers. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Vinita.
Okay, great. Well, it's, as Pat says, I think we've known each other, my God, since 1990s. It was
I
probably
know.
when I came to California, and you were at Inner Image. And yeah, in fact, some of the patients and families we still, had over this period of time. And, I've been doing internal medicine and primary care for about 30 years now. And I've kind of had a chance to kind of observe a lot of things. And what I found is in traditional medicine, we're all sort of very, we always kind of deal with the tip of the iceberg. And there's a lot of hovering and excitement and sirens and fire engines and, putting stents in people and doing all this stuff. And then, it seems like we're missing the huge mountain landscape underneath that tip of the iceberg. And so we can't ever get rid of that tip because it just grows another head, And so I started to look at, gosh, why is it we always end up here? There's got to be another way to not end up here in this situation. And then I started really looking at, what are the kind of things that make a difference? And it's always, for me, come down to a person's lifestyle. It's the majority of the time, I would say, regardless of the genetics, our lifestyle still has a huge impact on how the genetics play out, and how you do with it. And as far as an anti-aging segue with this, there is a book out called The Blue Zones. If anybody's not read that, I forgot the author, but it's called The Blue Zones. And this is a book that takes different populations throughout the whole world, like Sardinia, Italy, and there's a place in Japan, and Loma Linda was a place, and they found all these pockets in the world where people live to be like 100 or more, and they're very functional. They're not rocking in a nursing home. They are fully functional people. I mean, fully engaged in life. And they started to look at what are the similarities between these groups of people. And I think there are some of the similarities we noticed. One was as far as their diet. They were all small eaters. The average American diet would never cut it with this type of expectation of healthy life. The standard American diet is called SAD, S-A-D, SAD. That is the standard American diet, and it is probably responsible for the majority of our illnesses and disease. The biggest culprit, I think, is the ultra-processed foods, which is really 90% of the grocery store. If you go in, you've got the sodas, you've got the chips, you've got the crackers, you've got cookies. 90% of the grocery store really shouldn't be going into your body. And by ultra processed, what we're talking about is it's not food, but it's packaged to be really, it has no nutrition, but it's packaged to be very tasty. You know, like either with sugar and fat or salt, like a chili Cheetos, you know, or a Doritos or a Hostess cake or whatever. It's like not really food, but we have made that our food group, which is where our problem lies. So ultra processed is the biggest injury, but then the things in the other foods like the high fructose corn syrup, corn sugar, and all of these other ingredients, preservatives, I think are also a huge culprit. A lot of people talk about gluten and stuff, but you know, not everybody agrees on the gluten issue. There's certainly some people that don't react well to it. Some people feel that gluten and grains should be gone. You're going to see some disagreement with that. But in general, like things like oatmeal, for example, are naturally gluten-free. But what happens is when they're harvesting wheat, they'll put that Roundup stuff on the wheat so the wheat dies very quickly so they can harvest it quickly to get the wheat for the bread. So that stuff is pretty much poisonous as far as what it's going into our grains, right? So even if gluten was not a problem, it's I forgot the name of the ingredient, but it's the active ingredient in Roundup. So that's part of the problem, but also when they transport the oatmeal, they transport it in the same trucks that they use for the wheat. So now this Roundup stuff gets into the oatmeal. So when I get oatmeal, I like Bob's gluten-free organic steel cut oatmeal. So I get that. Whole Foods usually has it, and you know, I can cook it up on a Sunday, and you can just sort of dole it out during the week. It's already cooked. And some people like it in a slow cooker, but you can make that ahead of time. And I find that's a good healthy source of a carb. You can combine that with some raw walnuts, raisins, like shredded unsweetened coconut, cinnamon, apples. You can make this, you know, a pretty delicious treat. A lot of times I'll have that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because that's kind of my comfort food that I kind of want at that hour rather than reaching for the other stuff, right? So, but getting back to the diet, I think the standard American diet, where everything is packaged and processed, is the issue. And what I'm trying to do is try to get myself and everybody I know of to try to just make the stuff themselves. You know, it's just assemble it yourself rather than getting it already packaged and ready to go. And it can be something as simple as, you know, for breakfast, you may be having a hard-boiled egg and some avocado and some fruit. That's not a lot of cooking, but you're putting it together. It doesn't come like already made, right? So you can assemble things that are very, very easy. I just tried making my own almond milk for the first time. That was an experience because, you know, when you drink almond milk, I don't really care for the taste of it. And when it comes in a carton, apparently there's a lot of stuff in it like emulsify to keep it in solution. So that's not good for the gut. So this is an area where we attack the gut. But you can make your own almond milk. So here's just to throw it out. I mean, you just get like the raw almonds. I prefer like the organic raw, but raw almonds, you soak them for like a day or overnight in water. And then I put them in my Vitamix and just put some water in there and you just rev it up and it just makes this like milk out of it, right? Like a liquid. And then what you do is just pour that through like it's called a nut bag or some kind of straining cloth, and you get all the milk out of it. And that's almond milk. It's like better than half and half, but it's a healthy way to go for almond milk. And then that stuff that's in the nut bag, you can put that in muffins or anything like that. That's also possible. So that's an example of making your own stuff. Now you can take it to all different extremes, but you know, even making your own pizza at home, even making, you know, just something simple, make your own eggs and lox or whatever you're going to be making, try to just make it yourself. That I think is the key. And the processing packaging is really going to be taking us to a whole different, you know, area. So in the blue zones, they looked at, you know, everybody was like a small eater. Nobody was a big eater. There were no big people in this group of, you know, people. They were all people that were moderately active. Nobody was an extreme exerciser. Nobody has to feel like they're going to go climb Mount Everest or run 20 miles. these were all people that would walk 2 miles a day. They'd go pick up their mail, they'd go to the grocery store. They did their own cleaning, their own activities throughout the day. They were active as far as just normal activity. They weren't sitting. And they also had good support, family and social support. They noticed that was a big plus, you know. They also had a purpose, like they were going to get up and have something to do and have a reason to, you know, to do it. And there was probably some other similarities, but I thought, well, that's really a good thing to look at, you know, and look at these people that are successful, and kind of gear your own health towards along those lines. And I think as far as activity, you know, I think not sitting during the day is huge. We find that anybody that's sitting, the metabolism goes down, their risk of heart attack goes up when you're sitting. Now, if you stand, that risk goes away because, I mean, as far as from the sitting, because when you stand, these deep red quadriceps muscles in your leg are important in preventing heart attack. So now in my office, when I'm in the patient room, I'm always standing. I have a desk that comes up and I'm always just standing because I think that's, you know, that's important. So moderate activity. One of the things I like with activity, I wanted to pass on, I try to get every patient to do. So Pat, on channel 9 on the cable, which is KVCR public television, at 5:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday, it's called Classical Stretch with Miranda Esmond White. You can always record it, and I would recommend doing it as a group for everybody because it's for all ages, it's for everyone. It has to do with unlocking the fascia that's underneath our muscle. And this is what ages a lot of our bodies because the fascia is tight, it's dry. And so this sits underneath the muscle. So we think our muscles and joints are stiff because we're older, but it's really, when you unlock that fascia, now you can actually get full movement of the joints in the body. And this is 22 minutes and it's Monday through Friday. If anybody could record it on their DVR and then do it as a group, mostly you just need a chair for balance, you know, or somebody can certainly help a person if they needed it. There's some floor work, but you don't have to always do what, you know, she does, but it's nothing that is, you know, a huge thing to do. It's all very small movements, including, you know, using the fingers because the fingers have pathways that go for the neuromuscular system that people don't recognize for balance. And her whole thing is, it's called eccentrics. And I think it's probably one of the best things we do for anti-aging. I think that's huge. And let me think, one of the most important things also is are having the right kind of sleep. They're trying to get everybody to have, like, ideally 8 hours, but at least 7 hours of good non-medication type sleep. You know, they're trying to get people to have healthy sleep habits. And our culture doesn't condone that. I think a lot of the activity that's in our day with all the electrical stuff that's going on, I think that contributes to this constant being alert, being always, you know, listening to that news station all day long, and we're getting this. Your brain is constantly getting wired to be awake and not shut down and sleep. There was an island, I forgot where it was, but I was reading about it, and in their language, there was no word for insomnia. I mean, people, when it was dark, they went to bed, and light came up, they got up. I mean, it was like how we were designed in our caveman days, right? But in this village, there was only one phone in the whole village. And so people were not bothered with all this stuff that keeps our mind in a constant awake state, you know? So, and then plus a lot of us are doing the Pete's and Starbucks stuff. And, you know, 1 cup of Pete's or Starbucks has the same 3 times the caffeine of a cup of Maxwell House. So if you're popping a few of those in the day, you know, your mind is going to be kind of awake, right? So working on a healthy program for normal, healthy sleep, I think that's also critical for anti-aging, also for reducing risk of Alzheimer's, because during that sleep is when the brain repairs itself. it's a lot of repair work that goes on when you're sleeping, and that is very important. And stress management, very important, because stress, like other toxins to the brain, kind of attack the brain. And they're thinking that some of these proteins that are laid down with Alzheimer's, they were thinking is the problem, but the proteins are probably a reaction to the insults to the brain, whether it's gluten, some people think, or whether it's the ultra processed food, whether it's stress. All these things kind of hit the brain, and the brain tries to protect itself by laying down these proteins, which we used to think was the cause of the problem, but maybe it's more of an innocent bystander with this. We know that diabetes doubles the risk of Alzheimer's, but turns out a lot of us are maybe not technically diabetic, but you have the pre-diabetes. So elevated blood sugar does the same thing as diabetes in the body. So we don't get any free lunches here because we're not officially diabetic, So that whole issue comes from us being metabolically off balance, to be not in balance with our body. That's what creates this metabolic picture where it's easy to gain weight. You have cravings. You have the fasting sugar will be elevated, or after you eat, it's elevated. But if you get rid of the junk in the diet, it typically will rebalance the body. If you get rid of the stuff that is not food, the body gets rebalanced. And once you're off that sugar type of, sugar and salt are very addicting. If you take that out of food, most people aren't going to overeat, because it's, you could eat like a potato or whatever, but nobody's going to eat 20 potatoes. Unless you put like a lot of stuff on it that turns on the addiction behavior. So especially sugar, it's almost like crack cocaine in the brain. It's like it gives you that sugar rush, and then once your body is used to having this kind of crack cocaine around, it doesn't want an apple. It wants the See's chocolate, because it's once you have crack in your body, you want more crack. You don't want Tylenol, right? So we got to get the crack out of our systems to be effective with any kind of healthy plan. I think those are the biggest issues I see in our culture that contribute to aging, dementia, disease. There's all kind of in one packet, even cancer too. You can put that in there. So making these healthy changes helps kind of all of these things. It's not just one disease process, because they're all part of the same. They're saying Alzheimer's is kind of like type 3 diabetes in the brain. So we're chasing the same problem, but it pops its head up in different parts of our body. So now those were the biggest points I would want to make for anybody that's looking for healthy living and anti-aging. But I'm certainly